I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story, and welcome to the first day of summer. Tonight we're going to talk about Oregon's safety net for people who lose their job. It has a massive hole, or many massive holes in it. Falling through one of those, not that pleasant. Oregon's unemployment department is a mess, and it's our big story tonight. New data shows a majority of unemployed Oregonians have to wait more than 3 weeks to get their money from the state. The rates of first-time payments are the worst they've been in 4 years, and they're far below the national standard. So what's the problem? Investigative reporter Evan Watson went to find out.
Unemployed workers in Oregon are frustrated.
If you're already past due on your bills and your rent, you cannot catch up if you live paycheck to paycheck. The state is putting a lot of people at risk.
A big change from the Oregon Employment Department promised a fresh start to help process unemployment benefits.
One of the strengths of the new system is that we can quickly adjust to make improvements.
But 3 months later, the Oregon Employment Department is under even more scrutiny.
And I cannot be the only one that this is affecting.
Oregon is failing to send out quick payments to most unemployed Oregonians. A recent drop-off in performance coincides with the rollout of a new online claim system, even if that's not the only cause. Since April, just 40% of unemployed Oregonians have been paid their first benefit within 3 weeks, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. That ranks Oregon as one of the worst states in the country at sending out timely unemployment payments. The national standard is 87%. From September to March, Oregon hovered around 70%. Then Oregon transitioned to a new Francis Online platform. Kathleen Chicky Nussbaumer lost her job at Wells Fargo this year, part of massive layoffs. She applied and started receiving unemployment benefits, then she took a vacation. Following the rules, she didn't apply for payments while on vacation, but when she came back, Oregon had changed its system. Her continuing claims were denied, and she waited more than 3 weeks to receive benefits again.
If this is happening to me, it's happening to people that do not have, money in savings. They are living paycheck to paycheck, and that's where it was a big concern.
The agency cut down its phone hours from 9 to 4 each day, and it's no longer taking calls on Mondays to try and catch up on claims and fix payment delays.
When you start to see the numbers go lower, it can either mean that we're falling behind, or it can actually mean that we're getting caught up on a backlog.
The department blames staffing changes for many of its issues. Temporary pandemic-era staffers started leaving in 2022, and OED says the number of claims outpaced the staff left to handle them. Oregon lawmakers approved funding for more staffers earlier this year, and the department hopes to onboard everyone by August. But that doesn't fully explain the significant delays in first-time payments over the last 3 months.
Every state that has gone live with the new system sees that temporary decrease in productivity.
A department spokesperson told KGW that resolving older claims could be affecting this data, but ultimately they're still analyzing the data and don't know why it's taking so long for people to get paid.
Someone needs to be held accountable for what is this, the system is broken, in my opinion.
Francis Online is the same platform that Oregon rolled out last year for Paid Leave Oregon, and there were issues then. Nussbaumer had problems getting paid through that system, too.
You thought any issues with Francis Online would have been fixed in the Paid Leave Oregon rollout and not what we're seeing currently in the unemployment rollout.
I would think that they would learn from that.
State lawmakers started accountability hearings for the employment department delays last month. Another hearing is set for September.
Evan's with me now, and this story just drives me crazy. What are the benchmarks to finally get back to 100%?
Sure. So August is the set date for we're going to be fully staffed by that point with the funding that came earlier this year from lawmakers. So when you look at that, they have been onboarding people this whole time. It's not like they're just waiting till August. There are about 430 people employed with the Oregon Employment Department right now. That'll get up to 470. And then in talking offhand with a member over there at the OED, they said by the end of this year, they hope to have these older problems resolved. But then when I asked to clarify that, I said, so you mean this winter? What kind of month? They said, oh, we don't want to put a timeline on it just yet. So there's part of the frustration, right? They know the staffing needs to get back up to the numbers they want, but no definitive, hey, we're going to be all ready and good to go by this date.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, do you have true urgency if you're not trying to hit a September or an October, November deadline?
Sure, and for the people that We get lots of emails and calls from them that say, hey, I'm waiting weeks for these payments. I've got an issue, an adjudication, an appeal. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. That waiting can be excruciating.
Yeah, big hole in the safety net. All right, thank you, Evan. Appreciate it. Great story. Moving now to Portland City Council, a meeting that was supposed to run about 45 minutes today stretched into 4 hours. They were trying to decide whether to renew their multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal with Multnomah County to pay for homeless services. And as with many things involving those services, it's not as simple as it seems. Blair Best reports.
Discussion was scheduled to last 45 minutes. It went on for 4 hours, and that's because homelessness is a topic affecting so many. And as the mayor mentioned today, it is the most important issue in our community. The city has a big decision to make with how they continue to spend millions of dollars meant to help the crisis. Inside Portland City Council chambers Thursday, talks around money meant to address homelessness went on for hours.
We are highly motivated on this subject because the public's highly motivated on this subject.
The city is deciding whether or not to continue sending millions of taxpayer dollars to the Joint Office of Homeless Services. That's the city and county-run group that manages money meant for the crisis. However, the county holds most of the power. The city's contract with the group expires in 10 days, and some city commissioners are skeptical of re-signing.
I am still not quite to a yes yet, but I look forward to having conversations with my colleagues.
The contract on the table calls for the city to send the county about $30 million a year for the next 3 years. The problem? Some city commissioners aren't clear on how that money will be spent. In recent weeks, they've raised concerns over the county's spending on tent and tarp distribution for homeless people, while at the same time, the city spends millions removing, arguably, those same tents and tarps.
How, when, and to whom they get distributed matters. And based on that data, and when looking at the availability of shelter beds, is how we build this policy.
Now, another layer to all this sat in the fourth row of council chambers, the plaintiffs on a 2022 lawsuit against the city of Portland, claiming tents block ADA access on public sidewalks. As part of the settlement deal, the city agreed to keep sidewalks clear of homeless camps and limit how often they give out tents and tarps.
Look, we worked really hard to end up with a settlement agreement on behalf of people with disabilities.
The lawyer behind that case argued Thursday that if the city continues to fund the Joint Office of Homeless Services, the city could be in violation of that deal, seeing as the Joint Office provides tents and tarps to homeless people.
The Joint Office is one of the city's contractors, and the settlement agreement expressly provides that neither the city nor its contractors shall be handing out tents and tarps.
About 2 hours into the meeting, things heated up. Mayor Ted Wheeler revealed his motive behind wanting to continue sending city money to the county.
I'd like to make the case. Please. And I'm going to be very bottom line oriented, very pragmatic, and probably completely inappropriate. But the way I view it is by making this investment, we get to shape policy and priorities at the Joint Office, and we get access to steering 10 times the amount of funding that we are putting in, especially under the new IGA. So I actually view it as a good investment, provided that we hold the Joint Office accountable and continue to be able to shape their work in a manner that's consistent with our goals here at the City of Portland.
So the bottom line is, in order for the city to keep funding the Joint Office of Homeless Services, they want two main things. To be sure their money is going toward things that are working, like certain shelter models, such as the tiny home villages. And most commissioners would also like the county to limit their tent and tarp distribution so they won't be in violation of that previous ADA lawsuit settlement. So a lot of layers here, a lot of voices at the table. City commissioners voted to move this to a second reading, with a final vote coming next week. Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, Blair. Now to a storm that's brewing over what deflection will look like for people caught with drugs in Multnomah County. Tonight, there's growing pressure on the county to change course. More on that in a moment. Just so that we're all on the same page, let's go back for a second. When the legislature passed House Bill 4002, which recriminalized drugs this past winter, they told counties to create a deflection program. The goal was to get people found with drugs into treatment and to keep them out of the legal system. Washington and Clackamas counties are doing just that. But the Oregonians reporting that Multnomah County is creating a plan with no consequences. Noelle Crombie broke the story earlier this week into the Oregonian. She pointed out that Multnomah County's diversion program as it is now being created, will not require people caught with drugs to enroll in substance abuse treatment. Also, there's no limit on how often a person can opt for so-called deflection over arrest. She also reports that people will only have to check in at the drop-off center where they are taken to satisfy the requirements of deflection. We also reported last night that the man who just won the election for district attorney in Multnomah County, Nathan Vasquez, is being actively kept out of the discussion about what deflection should look like by his boss. That's the current DA who lost the election, Mike Schmidt. Why haven't you tried to get more involved?
I have. I've certainly asked that permission from my office. I have been trying to talk to various folks about this program. I want to be involved.
So the district attorney, Mike Schmidt, and Jessica Vega Peterson, they're not open to your offers?
I don't know about the chair yet. She and I have had some good conversations, and I do believe that we will have a very collaborative relationship, and I really want to work with her office. But certainly from Mike Schmidt, there has been zero cooperation in that front.
Another group not being included are police. I was able to track down the union president for Portland Police in Italy and talk to him about his position on this deflection program. Aaron Schmout says he looks forward to being included in these policy talks, and he's concerned that the current plan does not do what state lawmakers wanted it to.
So, I mean, we have a lot of work to do. I think, you're hearing from other counties a system that I think more kind of matches the legislative intent, which is that both law enforcement has some tools to abate some of the crises we're seeing on our street, but also that when people are either taken into custody or they interact with the system, that there's a pathway that's laid out for them. Speaking to a lot of our service providers, I think they feel the same way, that the concern is that this just turns into an odd custodial version of Measure 110 without any real carrot or stick, really. My biggest concern is any kind of custodial intervention. We've got to have a real clear plan laid out as to why we're doing it, because there's clear risk when you're interacting with people who, especially with fentanyl, that something sideways happens.
In other words, consider this. Is it worth it for a police officer to take the risk of putting someone on fentanyl in the back of their car with the small but real risk that they could overdose as they're being driven to the drop-off center? Because then it's the officer's problem. And the person in the back seat, well, once they get there, all they need to do is check in at the drop-off site and then walk away to be done with Multnomah County's deflection program.
I think we all want the same thing. I think we just view the pathway very different. There are people within the treatment kind of world who view the justice system as very punitive and kind of not the right partner. But I would just encourage everyone to understand we all have a role to play. And we've got to figure out how these handoffs are going to function. Because at the end of the day, we all want, again, the same thing, which is people getting the treatment when they need it, our streets getting cleaned up, people not having to deal with a lot of these just daily issues that are manifesting themselves, and people not dying at the rate they are from fentanyl, given the poison that it is.
There's also more reaction and pressure now from the folks that threatened to repeal Measure 110 as a statewide initiative. They sent this email to the county chair, Jessica Vega Peterson, and the district attorney, Mike Schmidt, today. They wrote that they have grave concerns about the policy direction Multnomah County is choosing, arguing it lacks the careful drug treatment off-ramp envisioned under the new law, and that it will perpetuate the status quo rather than disrupting and fixing it. Also, County Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards tweeted today that commissioners are being kept in the dark. So this is secret stuff that's going on. They are not being included in these plans. I also wanted to ask the county chair directly about the policy and sent emails to her office both yesterday and again today asking for an interview. I have not heard back. Same thing with the district attorney, Mike Schmidt. But I did hear from you. And most of you are not happy with the way Multnomah County is currently planning to set up this deflection program. And several of you are especially upset that Nathan Vasquez, the district attorney who just won the election, is being kept out of the discussions.
I just watched your piece with Nathan Vasquez, and I'm outraged by the fact that Jessica Vega, whatever her name is, has any intention to follow through on just repeating the past mistakes. This is absurd. It has to stop. There has to be a carrot and a stick. We know it doesn't work in the present sense. This is just not acceptable, and our voices need to be heard. We have been victims of crime from drug addicts personally, and this is just simply not acceptable. There has to be consequences for this type of behavior.
And Manuela wrote in to say, of course, the newly elected DA should be involved in the discussions on how to implement the program in a way that addresses the issue as was described to voters, not just paying lip service. It sounds like the present DA is a sore loser and demonstrates that by keeping the newly elected DA out of the discussion loop. And Patrick added, your story on deflection just confirms my decision to never live in Multnomah County. Between a county chair who appears to be trying to be a dictator and a DA working to subvert the will of the people and being petulant over his election loss just gives Multnomah County a dysfunctional government. Lena was also blunt and to the point.
I think Vasquez should be informed on what's going on. And I think Jessica Baker-Peterson should be out of office.
All right. Mondo wanted us to know that they support Mike Schmidt, or did until now. Although I was a believer in your interview with Mike Schmidt earlier this year, I now realize after hearing from Nathan Vasquez, I was way off base. The fact that Vasquez has been left out of the new policies going forward is totally absurd, and Mike Schmidt should be held accountable for this non-inclusive transfer of power. What in the world is the Schmidt team thinking? And then John and Pat emailed to say, it's astonishing that Multco continues to lower the bar and not represent Multco residents fairly. What will it take to get the Multco chair to acknowledge that she represents the taxpayers and this is not her personal ship to steer? Vasquez needs to be a professional nuisance and be available at every turn to help the unqualified form a workable plan. And just so you know, we really do look through all your emails and listen to all your voicemails to try and show comments from both sides. But what you've just heard and read just kind of represents the tone and direction of pretty much every message we got on this issue last night and again today. Although I will say there was one dissenter who wonders if forcing someone into drug treatment will make any difference.
Yes, my name is Elsie, and I was married to a man that was an addict and a drunk. There's no helping them until they want to get help. They will tell you whatever you want to hear to keep their bottoms out of jail or rehab or whatever. My husband was through rehab, I think 7 times in 17 years. And it just doesn't work.
And I'm sure that we've not heard the last of this. Drug possession becomes a crime again in Oregon on September 1st. That's when the deflection program has to be ready. We will keep an eye on it between now and then. And in the meantime, if you did not already send us your thoughts, now's the time. We'll take them through email. You could send them to thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. After the break now, an idea for addressing the problem that comes with homeless folks living outside that's raising some eyebrows in Washington State.
Remember in the old days, if you did something wrong, you had an option. Go join the service or you can go to jail. Or in the old Wild West days, leave Dodge.
Yeah, well, a couple of leaders in Thurston County, which is northwest of Olympia, want to drop charges for illegal activity if people promise to leave. Why law enforcement officials say that's probably not going to work. When the story returns. On this show, we often ask you to send in your thoughts on the stories that we cover. And, in doing that, we see a lot of ideas to solve problems like homelessness. Now, some of them can be a little bit out there, but I got to say, they don't quite compare to a proposal right now in Mason County, Washington. Some leaders there want to offer homeless folks a deal. You leave the county for a year and we'll drop any citations or criminal charges you face. Drew Mickelson from our sister station in Seattle reports.
We've been here since 1952, oldest restaurant in town.
Running a diner is hard.
We've got our kitchen here with the hippie who's over here making up breakfast burritos.
But the owner, George Blush, says he has more challenges outside Nita's restaurant, where he's found human waste on the sidewalk and routinely sees drug use.
There's a gentleman who's been wandering around out front out here. When you leave, you'll probably see him. 2 Sundays ago, he threatened to stab me.
Blush is also a city council member and has partnered with Mason County Commissioner Randy Netherland on a new approach to public safety. It's a lot like an old school approach.
Remember in the old days, if you did something wrong, you had an option. Go join the service or you can go to jail. Or in the old Wild West days, leave Dodge.
They're proposing an alternative to jail for those facing charges for crimes like public indecency, theft, and squatting. Those offenders would have the option of avoiding charges as long as they stay out of the county for up to a year.
If they're gone and they go to some other area and they're not selling the drug to make their habit here, that's less drugs there. If they're not dropping a needle for my nephew or niece or somebody else to get stabbed with, that makes us safer here.
The top law enforcement officials in Mason County have some concerns about this ordinance. County Prosecutor Michael Dorsey and County Sheriff Ryan Sperling both have raised constitutionality issues about this proposed law. And others say it would unfairly impact those experiencing homelessness.
I've been in the shoes of the individuals that we help here.
Jonathan Free runs downtown Shelton's Community Lifeline Shelter.
Got a roughly like 20 beds in here.
He used to live on the streets and in the woods of Mason County and says uprooting someone who needs help won't help anyone.
We're not solving our problem, we're giving it to somebody else to solve. So, where's the accountability of us taking care of our problems?
Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Thank you, Drew. Interesting idea. Tell us what you think about that plan. Again, the email is thestory@kgw.com, or you can leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. We'll be right back. And that, my friends, is the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. By the way, we're off tomorrow, and then again on Monday, you'll see the Olympic trials running here instead at 6:30. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you back here on Tuesday, and on our way out, we'll take a look out the window, some of our sky cams, the beautiful Northwest country that we live in. I hope that you have a great night.